as Len pointed out, and I kind of put that question out, I think for me and for what I would like to offer as a question is the inquiry of how do we honor the thread of humanity by being authentic and vulnerable um, in deepening our practice.
How do we honor the thread of humanity? By being authentic
and vulnerable
and vulnerable and deepening our practice.
In deepening our practice.
In deepening our practice. How do we honor the thread of humanity in being vulnerable and deepening our practice? Talk about simple questions. So that is the question, everyone, and there's, it looks like about a dozen of us. So if we can each take roughly a couple of minutes, up to a couple of minutes to answer, it should work out pretty well. If any of us sort of forgets about time, at some point you'll hear a little chime to remind you. And I think the best way to go would be when you feel ready to speak, just signal, and it's your turn to speak. Adam.
It just that question makes me think of a question, which is, what does it mean to honor humanity? It's a big question, just that in itself. And I just want to put that out there to the group, because I need some focus in that, because it's just so many things that flood my mind when I think about just what that means.
Thank you. Bradley. You need to unmute yourself.
There we go.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the honor and humanity. I was at an event yesterday, and there was a lot of the people who had been there before had these T-shirts, kind of like Karma Kitchen has their shirts, and this is called Them. The organization called Them, and on the back was a verse from Proverbs, and it said something to the effect of, "He who is kind to the poor lends himself to the Lord, and shall reap the benefits," or something to that effect. So it kind of, so I guess the way to, at least for me, my way to honor humanity, I guess, is just through acts of service and kindness, which isn't always easy to do for me. And one of the things that I remember the first time that I saw Anuj, and when you see him in person, the one thing that always sticks with me is that huge smile he has, and just the kindness that sort of emanates from him, and so I just try and think of that, but yeah, I just and I said that in that verse about being kind to the poor, or being kind to everyone for that matter. But I guess humanity will be judged on how it treats those less fortunate, not those that have what they need. So I guess it's just through kindness and service that, and seeing myself in others and seeing others in myself, the good and the bad, and how that is. So, thank you, Nush.
Thank you, Bradley. Two.
Thank you so much, Anuj. It's so nice to hear from you again and your singing. Yeah, think about humanity and vulnerability. This week, I've actually been starting Awaken Circles here in Toronto, and this week was our third one. And the topic was reading by Brene Brown on vulnerability, and it was really amazing for me to kind of hear kind of the wisdom around the room, and her reading about just vulnerability of, I mean, honoring humanity is honoring kind of like what humans are, and all these emotions that vulnerability brings up, kind of we label as negative, is just part of being human. That kind of came up for me, and it's so fascinating because the community here in Toronto, I mean, nobody's heard of the Awaken Circle until I came back here, and it's been our third, and just like, it's been such a joy for people to say, hey, this is like a regular part of my month now, because it is a space to be vulnerable. And I mean, I thank Uncle Dinesh and Nancy Hershida for teaching me that in the past year, and Anuj, you too. Yeah, that's what I had in mind.
Thank you too. So good to hear about your circle in Toronto.
Yeah, you guys are welcome anytime.
Oh, hey Wendy, let's take a trip.
So before you know it, we'll crash the party.
No problem. Always welcome.
I feel like responding to your seed question, Anush, and it relates to what you were also saying, Ofu, earlier about connecting the spiritual practice to how is that relevant in the world where there is so much disruption, so many problems going on in the world right now. And it's actually, it's something that I struggle with and think about. How does my practice become action in the world? And where do I act? Where do I serve? The needs are so great. What about people locally here who have been affected by the fire? What about people in Puerto Rico? Is there anything I can do about some of the issues and conflict going on in other parts of the world, in Africa and other places? And I don't have any answers, but I try to pick spots where I can make a difference, where I can do small acts. And I try to pay attention to where am I using my energies in ways which maybe aren't so skillful, and how can I redirect what I'm doing, and keep paying attention both to what's going on inside me and what's going on around me, and where can I be present for others. That's my my reflection. Who's next? Diane.
Thank you, Anuj. I feel so blessed to hear your voice. And last night I was at a gathering, a concert in Oakland with Snatam Kaur. There were 1,400 people in the room, and the power, the energy, the peace, and the joy that emanated from that sense of unity through the music was very nourishing, deeply nourishing. I think in my own response to your question, which I think is an ongoing process for me right now, very much exacerbated or riled up by everything that's happening in the world, is demanding that I deepen my practice. And like you said, the water goes to the lowest place and become more authentic and more honest. I resonated also very much with what you said too about the vulnerability. So honor humanity is both the humanity inside myself and the humanity out there. And without one, the other doesn't work. And I would say personally, I have been digging deep in my own practice, and this is, it demands more support for my practice. That is, the environments, the teachers, the mentors, the spiritual companions that can help me really touch the place which is the deepest yuck in myself that I do not want to touch. And I've been calling it shame. It's a complex of things. As I touch into my own shame, which has to do with my perceived inability to meet certain expectations, whether imposed externally or I've internalized those expectations and told myself that I'm bad because I can't meet those expectations. As I root that out and purify it, it makes me a clearer channel, my ability to reach out to others, to make a common flow from my humanity to someone else's humanity. I can feel that exponentially increase, and the actions that I am able to take, whether giving money or time or support in a direct presence, those become clearer and purer, and I can only hope that that makes a difference.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you. Libby.
Diane said something that I related to, a couple of things, but thinking about being in a big group. And last weekend, Len and I went to Jonesboro, Tennessee, to a national storytelling festival.
Oh, yes.
And it was absolutely fantastic. And we would sit in tents, maybe there were large tents set around this small town, Jonesboro, a very historic little town. And in each tent, there could have been a couple thousand people. And as the storytellers would tell their story, you could, in spite of thousands of people, you could hear a pin drop because they were so together. And I think one of the reasons that the weekend felt so positive and fun is because we were all together. And I know, being in the Deep South, there were people there who voted differently than I did, and who look at issues about sustainability and all kinds of things through different eyes than we do here in California. And yet, in spite of that, we were together. It was a very unifying experience of appreciating our common humanity. People told funny stories of human frailties that we could all identify with. And they also told stories of human, like one Jewish woman told the story of the people of Denmark who saved the Jews during the Holocaust. And so there was this range of from silly to profound. And we were all connected through these human stories. And so I guess that's what I relate to, is the humanity that we share. And I think, Adam, you said it when you said something about, the way I would put it is, what does it mean to be human? And I think that the challenge for me is just, can I rise to that gift that I have and we all have as human beings, that we are aware and we can make choices, and we can make choices that are for life and for the good of all. And so, do I do that? That's the question. Do I do that on a daily basis? Am I doing the best that I can to, in my own limited way, to help improve the world? So That's what I would add.
Thank you, Libby. Dinesh. You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Very happy to hear the reflections of everybody. And life, in whatever form, is all connected. And as long as we cultivate peace and harmony within ourselves, it emanates and it creates so many ripples in the world, and it does impact the entire world and the human community. So I would say, like in every awakened circle, through our presence, we create so many ripples, sharing our reflections. And at the end, we always say that let the goodness generated ripple out, beyond the walls of this house. So I don't think we need to really intellectually worry about what our small acts and ripples generated from there will do and how it will impact. It does impact in a very favorable way, because the vibrations are that of peace, harmony, love.
Thank you. Wendy.
What came to my mind is more of an image and also music. And I also related to the idea of vulnerability, and that's something I've had a great deal of difficulty of showing to the outside world, my own vulnerability. And so I had this image of this meadow and all these grasses in the meadow kind of swaying in the wind, and our vulnerability is the wind hitting us, and how we relate, how we move with it, how we sway with it. And then all the other grasses with their vulnerabilities, with the wind blowing, also swaying, and the whole field dancing together. And I was thinking of one of my all-time favorite songs, which is Holly Near's Sky Dances, which is taken from a Native American poem about nature dancing together. And so our swaying with the wind, our accepting of our vulnerabilities, helps us relate to others and to dance with others, humanity.
Thank you, Wendy. Len.
When I was a boy, one of the things I kept by my bed to read was a magazine called Popular Mechanics. So your question of practicality is so useful. How do we honor this golden thread that connects us all, that we realize through the different experiences you described, or however we have our mystical experience that lets us know we're one. My relationship with Libby is my strongest experience of being vulnerable and deciding to be vulnerable. There she is. Formidable woman. And so it really, for me, it's a daily, hourly decision to be vulnerable to her reflection, to see where I'm consuming too much energy or time, or not participating enough, but we really, I need her. I need everybody to see, to continue to be vulnerable, and because if you're not, we're not going to learn. And also we're going to put people off and distance ourselves even more from one another. And the other thing you asked about was deepening our own practices. And I think the way that I do that best these days is not only it deepens me and helps me feel more connected, but others, and that is just to give my ears and my time to other people and listen to other people's stories. Because when we were in Jonesboro or anywhere we go, people long to be listened to. I mean, it's one of the real diseases and emptinesses and causes of darkness on the planet. And so those two things I think that I'd like to practice is to be vulnerable and learn, and to listen to others as my service. Total faith that these are activities that will heal and let other people experience this mystical connection. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. Ofu.
Thank you very much. The question is a very good one. How do I honor humanity and keep the authenticity of myself and my vulnerability in the practice of being authentic and honoring humanity? It brings back to my memory in my different experience, attempting to facilitate a very hard situation whereby you see a group of people that are divided because of the incense spiral perpetuation, retaliation, retribution, whereby they are divided deeply with this optical delusion consciousness, whereby they see themselves as victims or the other is the cause of my problem, whereby the tension is so high. And myself, as a peacemaker, standing by the side, seeing the gap of fear and ignorance of the both, the gap who stands as the threat of the unity that will bring the two together, then I make myself available when nobody, no organization or whosoever around or the authority of the municipality or the government, they didn't want to attend or to bring these people together to understand why the ignorance or the fear that has stopped them from building back their lovable relationship. So for me, as a peacemaker, as a facilitator, as a relationship facilitator, I see myself vulnerable, and which I have laid down a service to humanity by risking my life, because it's not myself that matters. In that process, what I see is achieving the unity that we are damaged by the fear and the ignorance of the both groups. So it is the love and the compassion that drives me to attempt to place myself as a platform, as an answer, as a resolution, whereby the fear and the ignorance can be expelled. So myself is no longer I that lives, but the unity and the togetherness that is dismissed because of the ignorance and the fear. So I place myself and I continue being vulnerable, attempting to bridge this relationship together. And it gives me strength. And this is the passion that inspires my life, because I don't see my life, but what I see is the reconciliation. I don't see my comfort, but what I see is the social cohesion. I don't see my safety. I see the civic engagement. I don't see myself. I see the non-violence culture being put to place because somebody accepted to stand in the gap and be a joint to bridge this relationship. So this is what have been my inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ofu. Thank you very much. James, the other James.
Hello. I'm just overwhelmed a little and so pleased to hear from all of you and from each of your perspectives. And I guess the word authentic, Anuj, you mentioned that word and the deeper underlying understanding that perhaps we all bring to what does it mean to be authentic? From my perspective currently, I guess, it would be somewhat reflective of my deepest spiritual nature, our deepest spiritual nature, and that would have to be the lead in any authentic relationship, that spirit, that which is beauty, joy, love, that would be the lead point of contact for a authentic beginning. In other words, if it doesn't come from there and start there, then perhaps it's coming from ideas I might have about my nature instead of actually the recognition of it. So that has been a driver for me for many years. And the recognition of my authentic nature is the recognition of a deep, deep and abiding love, I think, that we all share, and a recognition that we're not separate. The truth is we are one, not just in some intellectual or whatever way, but in an actual factual way. There's nothing else going on here but consciousness. Nothing else.
Thank you, James. Yeah.
At least I'm not saying that as a belief. I'm saying that from a recognition and from a love of all humanity for its deepest, authentic being.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Adam, you started off with a question. Would you like to take a moment to offer some reflection?
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And after just listening to everyone, I'm feeling like it's coming into a little more focus for me. And I'm seeing that, this is a question that I think I deal with as I explore my own practices and spirituality. Like, what does it mean to even be doing this? Like, does serving humanity mean that I have to donate money to every cause that I can think of that's going on, that's important in the world? Do I have to serve every problem that's going on? Or is it more effective, as Dinesh said, to go inward and sort of serve the humanity and be able to see the humanity, as Libby said, inside myself? And if I can do that and be able to be vulnerable and go to that deeper place inside myself, then it feels like then I can be more authentic and I can be more connected in whatever I choose to do in my life. It might be however I serve humanity. If I can serve the humanity in myself, then I can more authentically serve an old lady, helping her across the street, or whatever I choose to do. It's coming from a more authentic place, and that's going to be more powerful, I believe. And it's going to ripple outward, as Dinesh said, and I can really, get to the heart of it. So thank you, everyone. That's what I'm feeling from hearing everybody.